Hey everybody, welcome to the fifth and the last video in this series on how I would create a mold from start till end. Now at this point, we pretty much have gotten everything laid out using these layout sketches for this plastic injection paddle for an AeroPress. And what we have to do now is we have to add the rest of the hardware. Like I said, most of the stuff that I'm using is from Hasco. And then in the end, we also got to get the assembly put together so it can open, close, and we can get the injection plate to kind of like go forward and things like that. We're going to have a hole going through the center. So here you can see there's a space here. So we're going to put a couple of feet in the back here. In Danish, they're called cat paws. And we're going to place those. And then we're going to place the hardware from McMastercard. See, I'm in perspective with auto. Looks weird. And then we're going to place the cat feet, and then we're going to place all the hardware, and then we are going to create the actually kind of like movement we need in here. So let's put the cat paws in here. Oh, see, I don't like how that is overlapping there. We're going to have to move that over a little bit. Oh, and I did it right into this one too. So that's not good enough. I'm still going to place them all to make my point here about how... so I'm going to go out, make that an active, and insert into current design. And so, you know, here's my point why... how easily we can move everything. So I thought it was a great idea to make them these vertical and didn't take into account that these mouse or cat feet, as we call them in Denmark, would be so big in diameter. That's all right. Okay, so clearly this is not, I don't want this. I'm going to move them in a little bit. So we can literally go over to our top plate, go in and say edit sketch. And I decided to make a relationship between these 2 points. So I'm going to abandon that idea. And then I'm going to place a dimension instead. So we should place that below. Do the right thing. Let's do it. What does 65 looks like? That still might not be good. 60. I like 60. So now I'm just gonna have to go in and kind of fix. Double flag, hit OK. Everything's going to calculate. And if we did it right, again, now when we go and look at this, we should have moved these over here. So I really hope that this makes a lot of sense. Now I want to show another thing that I kind of did on purpose when I created this. If you go in and we actually turn on our lower clamping plate, on purpose I actually made a 5mm space here, but when I went out and got these, I call them cat paws in Danish, I don't know really what the name is, then they're actually only 3, what means that I actually want to move this whole injection down by 3. Oh, you could also make the plate thicker, I guess. I mean, there's a couple of different options, but this is a typical layout. If we go in and we look at the front view again here, from the front sketch, we will see that when I drew this up, let me go ahead and edit the sketch. When I drew this injection up, I actually made it at 5 and instead of 3, because that's what the cat feed is. So if I go ahead and change this to 3, you say to yourself, well, what happened? Well, everything stayed in here now. So let's hit stop. Now change that to 3. And what did that do to everything we have in here? Well, this looks good, but if you just saw down here, we get a warning. There's 2 extrusion balloons that has failed, right? And this can easily happen. Well, if I choose that this is what I want, I now need to go in and try to solve some errors in here. Now, what I'm going to do right now is I am just going to literally go in and just make sure that I hide everything here that is not really needed right now. Okay. So we have the backing plate. We have this, the backer clamping plate. Now, I'm going to turn on the retainer plate. There shouldn't be any errors in there. Then if we're moving up, then we have the lower spacing plate. There shouldn't really be any errors in there either. What happens when we go up to the lower mold plate? Well, here we do have an issue because we moved everything down another 2mm, right? And if we turn on the lower insert, well, that actually stayed. So what moved was the ones we did the direct edit on. Now the last 2 components I'm gonna add to this one before I start editing hardware is these bushings and these here. So let's start out by adding these into the design here. So I am just gonna go ahead and hide all these components here. Our the lower, and there we go. So we gotta insert these bushings. Insert these into current design. So there are those. And again, they will also guide the lower spacing plate right there. And then to guide the right and the left spacer, oh, we never got the holes through the right and the left spacer. So to put the last spaces in here, we're going to use these here. So we're going to insert these. These bushings here. I'm just going to place these down. -8. Like that. So they go through this. They should attach right here. Right, so they goes right through the edge, through these two plates, and then they go into the lower spacing plates. So the last thing we're going to do is the hardware, and here I am going to use the McMaster-Carr hardware. So to do that, it's very easy to do. Going to insert McMaster-Carr, and you get the catalog, and I'm going to say socket head cap screw. It's going to be metric. What is your diameter? Mine are 12, and the first length I'm going to go for here is 45. Right there. You can actually make this window a little bit bigger. Go and click on the part number and click product details. And then if you scroll down, you can choose all different kind of format. I normally pick the step file right here. Hit save. And that screw is going to be brought right into your component, just like if it was an outside component. And now we can go ahead and do the same thing as we've been doing all along to place these. Now look at this. This is not good. So what we can see here when I did my section analysis is that one of my injector pins actually cuts right through the mold. So we're going to have to either move the injector pin or we're going to have to move the coolant channel. Now the easiest thing is probably to move this coolant channel over here on this side. So I'm just going to hover over here and see that if I go into my sketches, and this would be our front insert, that we have these coolant lines sitting over here, and we can see the injector pin is actually cutting right through there. That's not good, right? So let's go into our insert our sketch. We'll get out of the section analysis. Go to our front insert sketch, edit the sketch. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to move this one over just 5 millimeters and see how it looks then. Stop sketch. We're going to do all our calculations. And if I do another section analysis, it looks like that we're now clear with the injecting pin, but it might mean that these holes here should be, this hole here should be a little bit deeper on that lower insert right here. So if we go into that one and we make that one active, that's actually this one here, we can find that hole, right? By clicking in here, we can see that that is these holes here. So I'm going to edit that. And I'm going to make the depth 150. And let the software do its calculations. And now we're making sure that these goes down here and that the locating pins are not touching our coolant holder. So I hope that this kind of like is helpful in regards to kind of like using this section analysis tool to kind of like troubleshoot through here and making sure that we're not hitting anything. Now there's a couple of more things I just wanted to show you quickly here, so I'm turning everything back on. And one of them is the selection folder, selection tools we can create in here. And I didn't use this when I was working with this model. It could make life a lot easier when you start creating them. What you can do is we can actually create selection sets. And what selection sets means is that we can take all the hardware, for example, and if I select all this hardware here, and then we have this selection retainers and everything else, let's do all this, and down to the bottom is all hardware. And then also these 4 pieces here. And if I right click, I can say create selection sets. And when I do that, up at the top now, I now have a folder called selection sets, and I can now click right here and select it all, and now I can hit V, and I have now hidden all the hardware in here. I can also go over here and I can turn them all on again. And then you could also do something like creating an upper and a lower half, for example. So if I turn on the upper insert, the upper mold plate, and the upper clamping plate, for example, I can right click on those and say create selection set. So now this will be created as, and you can rename these. So I can call this upper. And we'll call this hardware. So now if I can select all these, and I could now hide them or unhide them depending on what I want to to use. Oh, I didn't include one component in there. So that selection set can be handy. I don't know. It's not like something that I'm using that much as you saw me through here, but I want to show you this there. Now the next thing we have that is very important to talk a little bit about is right now everything is still kind of like moving around. All these components have not been nailed down in space, and I'm waiting to do this to the end actually. So what we're gonna do, and definitely watch my assembly video if you want to get all this kind of like nailed down. I'm gonna make one component ground. I'm actually gonna choose to make this component here, make that one the ground component. So that will be my lower mold plate. I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna ground that one. Then I'm gonna create a selection set from, and I'm gonna go back to the upper. I'm gonna create a selection set for the upper one. Now I can go in here and to assemble and say rigid group, and I'm gonna now group all the components together that are in our upper selection. And that is also going to include the upper insert, and it should actually also include it has all the childs, but it's all the. So now with that means that this can move together like this. So all this is now can move around like this. I'm going to go Ctrl+Z to get it back. So what I want to do is I'm going to create a relationship between the ground component and this one, so we do kind of get the relationship we want. So what I can do is I'm going to bring it back in where it was, and I'm actually just going to cheat here by turning off the lower clamping plate. I'm going to turn off the spacer and this one right here. And then I'm going to use the component that is called as-built joint. And again, watch some of my other content to put all this together. I'm not going to go through here and explain it all. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the pin and select that as a component, and I'm going to select this bushing here that belongs to the other part, and then I'm going to make a slider relationship between the two. So now you can actually slide back and forth like this. I'm going to hit OK. So now we have the sliding action of the upper here between these two. Now I can go over to that joint and find it down here in the bottom. So that is that sliding joint right there. And if I right click on it, I can say edit joint limit. And now I can say the minimum is 0. And I can say the maximum here that I want it to move is going to be, and I'm just going to make a number, 100 millimeters. So what that means is that now it's going the wrong way. I think that's what we're going to make it 300. There we go. So it's a minus number. So now what this means is that this thing, so now this will move like this. So that is good. Now we need to select, made a rigid group for the remaining components. So the remaining component is going to be the lower insert, the lower spacing plate, it's going to be the right and the left spacer, and the clamping plate. They are all going to be with all their child components. And then the last one we need to do is actually the injector plate. So I'm just going to hide for 1 second the upper section here. And I'm going to hide all the hardware. They should follow along, I think. And then we're going to create a rigid group between this and all its children. And then we are going to create a, let's measure from here to here. That's 27. So then we're going to go in and create as build. And we're going to select this component and this component, and we're going to select the position to be through there. Hit OK. Go over to that joint. A lot of joints. By now, edit joint link. Minimum and maximum is going to be 27. Hit OK. So now that can move back and forth 27. Let's get all our hardware back on. Oops. So you gotta select it. Hit V for display. Then we can see all the hardware. And there is the injector pins coming in and out. So if we also take the upper one, make that visible, now we should be able to grab the back end, drag that out 300, and now grab the plate and push that out. And then when this one closes again, it's going to hit these 4 pins. That's going to push everything back in. The last thing that we're missing in here is the rod in the back end of it. This what is normally a bushing rod that's going to push the thing back and forth. I'm going to leave that one out here. I think I'm done with this mold. I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to put in here finished mold. All right, guys, that is it. That concludes this series. I hope that you got something out of this, really from the beginning to the end. Like I said at the beginning, this is a little bit different for me to create a video like this, especially because it also became so long. And I hope it was okay that I speeded it up through some different sections. Like I said in the beginning, I hope that, you know, if you're watching this, it was because you wanted to see it all the way to the end. I hope you appreciate this. If you like this video, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up. If you didn't, hey, be fair. Hit the thumbs down. That's completely okay with me. So until the next time, I hope that you have an awesome, awesome day.